and blessed with the opportunity, the ability, the continuing effort of finding unity in the bond of peace. God, in His infinite love, has established for us the beauty of relationships. In fact, the very essence of our lives together through the procreative process is that new relationships are born all the time. And while those new relationships are born, oftentimes some of the relationships that were born are fragile and they get broken or they are separated. And the end result is the person becomes isolated. In the prodigal son, all of us, I suppose, can be identified as the prodigal son. And I hope you will study along with me from Luke 15 about the topic if you like. Sometimes I can see the questions if you're there with me, and if you have any questions or comments, you can insert them in there. But trying to get on and do it live as well as have it here for your future study. A journey back from brokenness to restoration. Talked about resentment on the program. Talked about how that we process resentment to prevent it from becoming a hindrance from our having relationships. And always takes two people. And this illustration, again, takes two people. Actually, there's three people in our parable of the prodigal son. He gathers up what is his, in verse 12, like many of us do, and say, hanging out here with y'all is great, but I want to go do this and go do that, and he did. So he went to his father, and he took his livelihood. And after not a long time, he took off and wasted the possessions on prodigal living. He spent all that he had, and he then found himself in the condition that he was no longer prepared for a famine. No food, no money. And so he began to feed the swine, feed the hogs. And through the feeding of the hogs, restitution began. Because it says that he came to himself. And, I know that maybe this is overtaught, but I think maybe it's understood. That moment in time in your life, whatever it is that brings you to a conviction, that breaks you. You have made a wrong decision, and the wrong decision has left a breach, that is a distance between you and your family. In this case, we've got the father, but we also have a brother coming into the picture pretty soon. And herein is a great difficulty for us to wrap our minds around. Because the father's role in this picture is the perfect illustration of empathy, and the kind of empathy that we should possess, and how that we get things put back together. As I have stated many times, my desire is that there is restoration of relationships in churches that are not running together right now in our very city. And the only way that that can happen is that there be, and I'm going to say restitution, if there's a need for a gap, if there's a gap there that a person is looking for someone to do something so that restitution can occur, reconciliation, the result. The Father is the one we need to pay attention to in this part of the study, because the prodigal's father had given him the power, the substance, whatever he needed to go and do what he did. Now, it was the young son's choice to do what he did, but the father enabled him in the sense that he gave him what was rightfully his. He spent all that he had. He became so poor that he was just literally looking to eat pig food. And then he thought about his father again. His father had given him what he wasted. It led him to that state. What the father gave him didn't take him to the condition he was in. It was his misuse of the goods that the father had given him. And let us understand that. But we want to look at this healthy empathy. And also, all of us as prodigals, need to see what God is doing. And we need to comprehend the discipline and the struggle that we will experience. And yet he says it in this way. When he came to himself, he realized what his father had. I'm perishing with hunger. I'm going to arise and go to my father's house and just humble myself. And he did. He said, Father, I have sinned against you. I've embarrassed your family. I have done everything against you. And now just let me be a servant. Wasn't looking for a restoration to be a son. Just let me be a servant. And so it is that the father had a compassionate response and not some resentment, and teaching us about the kingdom of God and the marvel of God's mercy, how that we have to humble ourselves to receive it. And then when we look at the brother, we have to acknowledge the glory of God's mercy. He respected the son's free will. He granted the inheritance with a heavy heart. And he allowed the son to choose his own path. And he did. And he allowed the son to experience real consequences. He was in real hunger. He didn't run and save him knowing he was hungry, but he permitted his hunger to drive him to a place he needed to be. And if we look at the discipline that God brings to us, he permits, orchestrates, providentially, these things that are out of order and contrary to his will. He can redirect us even in our foolishness. While we were sinners, Christ died. While we sin, Christ demonstrates the way, the truth, and the life. So it didn't just support him in his wantonness living. He allowed the way that he was living his life to bring the result that it brought. Now, what occurred was surprising, I think, to everybody. Because when he said, I'll arise and go to my father, and he arose, came to his father, verse 20, and when he saw that when he saw he was a great way off, his father saw him and saw him and had compassion on him and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said, Father, I've sinned against you and in your sight, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And the father just said, get the best robe and put on the ring. And let's be merry. Let's rejoice, because my son who is dead is alive. He was lost and he's found. And they began to be happy. They were just being like they should be. In the relationships that we develop as sons and daughters and as children of God, we can see how that we get ourselves isolated from God by choice. The prodigal son, by choice, he thought it was going to be this way, and he separated himself from his family, from his father, while continuing to try to access the blessings and benefits, only to realize that those blessings and benefits don't continue, and that you've used the very glory and blessings of God to leave you in a place that he had no intention of you being. But the Father, unconditional love. He wanted the same thing all of the time. I want the same thing all of the time. I want the mercy of God, the forgiveness of sin. I want to be right with him, and I want to have record broken. It's an affront and an embarrassment to the testimony of our faith in Jesus when these things are not so. The Father eagerly watched for his return. You know, you wonder if maybe there were several sons out there that had warred with each other, if he would watch for the return of them all. But when they all came back, they wanted to keep their sides. No, it was time to celebrate and be transformed into the family. The Father's love is shown by allowing consequences for maturity and opening his arms for redemption. And that last little part of our discussion, when he says the older son, he was in the field and he came and he drew near the house and he heard the music and the dancing and the servants. He called to him and he said, hey, what does this mean? And said, hey, your brother was lost and he's back. He's safe and sound. We've killed the fatted calf. They're having a party. And he said to his father, lo, I've been with you many years and I've been serving you, and I've never transgressed your commandment at any time, and you never even gave me a young goat. And now you're going to make merry with my friends? This son of yours who devoured his livelihood with harlots, killed the fatted calf, said to him, son, you're with me always. I have you. You're mine. It was right that we should make merry and be glad that your brother was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. If we are in relationships, friends, where that we have been isolated or separated, it is the Father's will. If we are in isolation, come back to him. And when you get there, guess what? You're going to be judged by your brothers. Be prepared. And as the brother, restitution in the hands of the Father. He determines, and what the young man had wasted in his livelihood, through humility, his restoration was the mercy and the grace that permitted him to come back into the family and be whole. Help us become compassionate leaders knowing what empathy that Christ has is what he desires of us. Let us weep with those that weep, rejoice with them that rejoice.